Hi, Gary Stearman with another update from Prophecy Watchers. And today I want to address a subject that's been bothering me for a while. We've never addressed the subject of school shootings. You remember Parkland, Florida, February 14th, 2018, 17 students killed when 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz walked into the school with an AR-15 rifle and who knows what else, I don't know the details, and shot 17 of his fellow students. And it turns out that he had been watched on many, many occasions prior to the shooting. He had even gone on YouTube saying, and I quote, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." Well, he lived up to that promise. And set a lot of us thinking, what in the world is going on? And then just recently, Santa Fe, Texas. That happened May 18th, 2018. A student, again, at Santa Fe High, Demetrios Pasgortis, 17 years old, and a school student, walked in with his dad's shotgun and an old .38 revolver. We're not talking about super weapons here. Shotguns and .38 revolvers have been around for a century. And he killed 10, injured 14. And as I make this update today, many of them are still in the hospital. What's going on? Now, many people have said, well, it's the guns, guns, so many guns now. I got to tell you, I can remember when I was a high school student. That's been some time ago. I don't want to say how long, but kids would drive to my high school in pickup trucks with gun racks in the back window, and it was not uncommon to see a .22 rifle in the back window. Lock the truck, come out of school that afternoon, the .22 rifle would still be there. Nobody thought anything about it. The idea of somebody walking into a high school. I went to a high school with 3,000 students. I went to another high school that had 4,800 students. There was never a thought of gun violence, even though a lot of the students were regular shooters. What has changed? Well, that's what I want to talk about. Is it the gun quantity? Is it social hatred? Is it some kind of social confusion? I don't think it's any of those things. And I wanted to look at an area in the Bible that I have talked about many, many times in the past, haven't mentioned it for a while, but it has to do with apostasy, what the Bible refers to as apostasy. And I'm going to turn my Bible to 2 Timothy chapter 3. And many of you who have watched these updates for a few years will remember that I've quoted this passage before. And it's 2 Timothy 3:1, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come." Stop right there on verse 1. I think we're living in the last days. I think we're probably going to experience perilous times. I think we are. In fact, going back to 1938 and the Nazis and World War II, and then all of the brush fire wars that have popped up in the years since, and the communist revolutions and so forth, all of that is subtended under the idea of perilous times. Verse 2, "For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, and unholy." We are drifting in that direction. Some would say it's more than drifting. Verse 3, "without natural affection." And that means without brotherly love. That is to say, instead of brotherly love, there is hatred and competition, viciousness. There is social division at every level, fomented, by the way, on the various internet outlets available. And I'm thinking of Facebook right off the top. Read Facebook for a while and then think about without natural affection. Truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, that means having no self-control. Fierce, despisers of those that are good. Traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure, more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. So that's this list that we've read many, many times before. And you're saying, well, how does that speak to gun violence? Well, I'll tell you exactly how it speaks to gun violence, because I think, what the Bible would feature as the central idea when it comes to violence in general. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. The Greek word translated into English as perilous is halepas. And again, many of you may have heard me say this before, but that word is a very specific Greek word, and it means ragingly insane. And what is ragingly insane? Well, think of the idea of a mental institution. People running and butting their heads against the bars, screaming, crying, totally out of control. Little teenage weaklings it takes too strong attendance to handle one weak little guy who's absolutely possessed with something that's driving him internally. In other words, the whole idea of ragingly insane means having more strength than is possible for someone your size to have, having violent tendencies, being murderous, having the propensity, the unnatural propensity to do violence, even to the point of torture and killing. That's what this phrase implies. Perilous times, halepas, is found only one other place in the New Testament. That word is found in Matthew, and I'm going to turn there right now. If you're following me with a Bible in your hand, open your Bible to Matthew chapter 8, and let's just read starting in verse 23. Jesus gets into what is a fishing boat. The King James Version calls it a ship, but it would be like a 20-man boat, a rather large boat. And when he was entered into a ship, his disciples followed him, and behold, there arose such a great tempest in the sea, insomuch that the ship was covered with waves, but he was asleep. So get the picture here. And it can get to be pretty violent on the Sea of Galilee. There is the west wind that blows down through the horns of Hattin across the sea, and you get big, big waves. And that's what was happening here. And he was sleeping in this boat, and his disciples came to him and woke him and said, "Lord, save us. We perish. We're going to sink." And he saith unto them, "Why are you fearful, O ye of little faith?" And then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. But the men marveled, saying, "What manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him?" This is the setup to something that I want to talk about. We have here the Son of God in the body of an ordinary man. He lived for 33 years, and probably most people who saw him thought that, well, he was certainly a charismatic man, but they wouldn't have looked at him and said, "This man is the Son of God walking in human flesh." They wouldn't have said that at all. In fact, the Romans and the Jewish authorities hated him. But here he is, God in human flesh. He can change the winds and the weather at a single command. This is the setup for what comes next, because after Jesus and the disciples had sailed to the east side of the Sea of Galilee, you come to this verse, Matthew 8:28. "And when he was come to the other side," that is to the east side of the Sea of Galilee, "into the country of the Gergesenes, there met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no man might pass that way." So get the setup here. Over toward what's today called the Golan Heights, and there are caves and there are places where people would camp out and hang out there. You have two madmen guarding what they consider to be their territory, and they were so strong that nobody could stop them. Jesus and the disciples have just gotten off the boat, after Jesus had demonstrated his ability to control the weather, now they are confronted by two men coming out of the tombs, the caves, exceedingly fierce. In other words, they're raging madmen. Well, what I want to tell you is that the same word that Timothy uses to say in the last days, perilous times shall come, is here used to describe two men, exceeding fierce. It's the same word, halapos. In other words, Timothy is saying in the last days there will be a raging insanity that resembles what Jesus and the disciples ran into when they came to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. There came two men out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, halapos, so that no man might pass that way. And behold, they cried out, saying, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? They recognized Jesus. The man on the street didn't recognize Jesus, but these two madmen, ragingly insane men, did, which brings me to my point. The point is, when you question gun violence today and mass murder, are you talking about guns? And should we outlaw guns? Are you talking about locking up schools so that ragingly insane people with guns can't get inside the schools? Or are you talking about an entirely different phenomenon? And that is the phenomenon of possession by demonic forces that cause people to do things that normal human beings would never do. And that's my point. To explain what's going on today, don't look at guns. AR-15 or a .38 pistol, I don't care what it is, don't look at the gun. Don't look at social norms or social fracturing of various kinds or social pressure. That's not where the answer lies. People who would kill other people on a mass level, a student killing 10, 15, 20 classmates, and then afterwards taken down to the police station, he shows a curious detachment, a sort of an emotional blankness, like, what did I do? Why am I here at the police station? All of this, to me, is indicative of rampant and increasing demonic activity. I know that most of the people in the 21st century don't want to hear those words, but there they are. I think that demonic activity is going to increase. That's exactly what Timothy was reading in the words of Paul. He was reading that in the last days there will be a raging insanity that will sweep the world. The next time you read or hear about someone having done this sort of thing, just think of the words of Timothy. And that's why I read what I did a moment ago. 2 Timothy 3, verse 1, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. Remember, when you read that word, perilous, comes from the Greek word meaning raging insanity. What does raging insanity mean? In the context of the Bible, it means demonic possession. And you're saying, oh no, certainly we're not talking about that. Oh yes, we are. I would propose to you that no normal teenager is going to grab guns and go shoot his classmates unless he's driven from within by a dark force. You just don't do that. And then come out of it later and you just look perfectly normal. What happened? What did I do? This is rather typical. But it's typical of the kind of possession the Bible routinely speaks of. That's how I know we're living in the last days. Remember, keep praying, particularly for the kids in school, for the vulnerable among us. Pray for their safety and for their strength. I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, you keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.